welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA Nations round number 6 driving at Bathurst. I obviously couldn't do the top 24 race because there was multiple people on 75k, and that meant that I think the way that the system did it was whoever's had the 75k or been playing the game first would get picked, and I knew obviously I started the game in January so I wouldn't have got selected, so I decided to just do the first slot. Then that gave me a little bit of time to practice the manufacturer's race because I hadn't really had time to do much practice for these races. I really would have liked to have had a lot more time, but I was quite surprised with my pace in the Bathurst because although I know I like this track, it does suit me. The Ford I'm not a particular fan of. I haven't done too much driving in it. I did a little go obviously on the Daily Race B just to get myself familiar with it when it was on. Then went on to this to do some obviously practice. Managed to get myself in the top 10 stars for a brief amount of time. I don't think it stayed within the top 10. I think it matched the bottom time the time I did, but this was my qualifying run that was going really well at this stage. You might have been able to hear that there was some noises from, you could probably hear my steering wheel because I somehow managed to put the web camera recording the audio, so it goes a little bit quiet as I think at just the stage just then, because I was commenting on the time that was pole at that point, 2:03.7, and I was quite surprised how slow the pace was, because you can see I'm massively up on this lap. This was only my first lap, obviously that I'd done. You can see I didn't. I really slow out lap again, get rid of some of the fuel, and just preserving the tyres, making sure the tyres don't wear out, and then went for a one flying lap because you don't need to go in the pits if you do this way of doing it. And you can see I've got another ability to do another lap after this anyway with the fuel, and went over the line with a 2:02.6 I think it was, which it wasn't a perfect lap. I knew that I could get that further down. What was quite surprising was in the top 24 race that would have been good enough for about P7 I think it was, and that's without obviously doing any more laps. Obviously they had an extra 5 minutes qualifying. I think I could have got that down with the extra qualifying and lower fuel to a very low 2:02 I think, because you can see I was already up on this sector there, and I tried to push too hard on this lap because I knew I only had one lap, but I would have been able to go in the pits and get another lap done with fresh tyres on low fuel if I was in the top 24 race. So I think a low 2:02 would have been on the cards, which would have been quite fairly high up on the field in their race. But it shows you that my pace was really good. I actually qualified in P1. There's no sound on at this stage because, like I say, for the race as well, I had the audio recording from the webcam, which had some quite choice words, obviously when incidents happened and mistakes I made. So I've had to re-record from the replay the audio and try and place it in the right place when it starts the race. So I think I got it right. I've kept all the footage from this race, all gameplay based again, because obviously starting P1 I actually managed to control the race really well at the start. I was doing such a good job. I'm going to let you guys obviously watch the races. You can see quite a lot of mixture in the field, and it was actually quite a high split. You can see Grota 91, very fast driver. A lot of fast drivers in this race, all the way through the grid, and a lot of people choosing different cars. I think a lot of people didn't like the tyre wear on the Ford. I found that it was drivable still. You can see they're going through the grid. Some really good drivers all the way down the grid. It was actually quite a high top split. I think 2,700 points was available for the win. So I was looking in a really good position at this stage. You know, picking up P1 in qualifying. That was probably my best P1. I have had P1s in top split races before in qualifying, but I actually felt like I beat RC Mura to pole, which is always a good thing. If I'm managing now to start beating people like that, it shows you the progress that I am definitely making on this game. I can feel the progress as well. I'm starting to feel the grip a lot better, especially obviously getting more used to the view that I'm now using. It's all starting to come together, and obviously the tyre model 100% suits myself more than the old tyre model because it's a little bit more realistic. It's got a little bit more feel for where grip should be. It's more, I think it's more appropriate the speeds you can now take through the corners, whereas in the old one you could kind of drift the rear a bit, and now I think it's a lot more realistic. So starting the race, my main aim was obviously to straight away try and break RC Mura's slipstream. Obviously starting in P2 RC Mura, I'm starting in P1, and that was the aim, to get away from the group because I didn't want RC Mura to be able to do fuel saving behind me. Obviously I'm starting P1, so I need to drive reasonably aggressive but not too aggressive because this was a no stop race. I knew that from the start. I knew it would go 8 laps. It was fairly obvious by the 15-minute mark, and the best way to do this race was not to pit, just to fuel save all the way, because a pit stop would lose you too much time, and then you would have been having to fight through about 19 cars after you pitted, which was never going to work. So going on the start straight away, turn 1, managed to hook that up reasonably well. He's starting to pick the slipstream up a bit there. but I was quite surprised how easy I was able to pull away from RC Miura. I don't know whether he was on a different way of doing his fuel, but I obviously wanted to. I go to fuel mixture 2 for this section. That was the aim for pretty much the whole race. Use mixture 2 through these corners, very similar to how I used to do it in the Corvette, and then just short shift it a bit on the straights. And the Ford was fairly comfortable doing that for the fuel. It meant that I had enough fuel to go all the way to the end fairly comfortably, and I could still drive this bit fairly fast because fuel mixture 2 in the Ford is still fairly good on speed. As you can see, straight away managed to break that slipstream already, and that was the best achievement. You know, getting out of the slipstream straight away from someone like RC Miura, it was really good to see that I could do that. And now I'm in a really strong position because he's not able to fuel save behind me. I can now run my own race and just concentrate on keeping this car smooth, tidy, not worrying about hitting amazing lap times, because that's what this race was not about, lap times. This race now was, because it was a no-stop strategy, it was about just looking after your fuel and just trying to keep the car smooth. You don't want to be sliding the car around because the tyres will wear when you do that, so just keeping it nice and smooth. And then on the straight, you can see I'm just short shifting a little bit, but I'm doing it enough that the car's still accelerating fairly fast. You can see, but that's how I was judging the, you see, going through there, it's pretty much identical speed to as if I was revving the car out, and then putting into mixture 2 at the end of the straight just to save a bit of fuel. That's not a massive amount of fuel it'll save, but it then gives you a smooth entry and exit from this corner, which helps preserve the tyres as well, and it's still keeping speed with what I would have pretty much been doing using one mixture. So everything going well so far, 1.2 seconds, and now all I had to do really was just keep the gap away from the slipstream. So you can see when I start getting closer to slipstream, back into one mixture, and then I can rev the car out a bit more. So going through turn 1, hook the corner up, and then just let it rev a little bit more than what I was before, just to break that slipstream again, make sure you can't get into the slipstream. And I've done that straight away again, getting the gap up to nearly 1.2 seconds again, and really maintaining this gap very well so far. I was actually quite surprised. I was in a little state of shock at this stage because I didn't expect to be in the lead of this race. I didn't expect to get pole for one, because there was a lot of fast drivers in this. Unnamed VLC, Oscar Ruse, Grosser, very fast RC Miura. Big names in this race, and I really didn't expect to get pole. And this was not what I expected to be in a situation of leading the race and controlling the pace and being able to just keep myself away from the slipstream. It's not what I expected. So I was kind of thinking, is there something I've not thought about with this race? I was thinking, is it going to go longer than 8 laps? I didn't know 100% how the timing would work, but how I expected it to work would be how iRacing does, based on when you go over the line and stuff like that. So it could have really have gone more than 8 laps. So I just kept my head down and just tried to concentrate and managed to get the gap up to 2.5 seconds there. So pushed fairly hard through there, but it's just controlling the pace. And I think RC Miura obviously saving fuel, or made a little error in that section. So now I'm just going to save some more fuel, because while I've got the gap at 2.5 seconds, there's no point me driving ultra aggressive. I might as well just do some fuel saving, you see, really early upshift, and then when I need to accelerate to make sure they don't get the slipstream again, I've got the fuel to do it. So everything going perfectly at this stage of the race. Gaps over 2 seconds, and controlling this race pretty much perfectly at the moment. Couldn't have asked for a better situation to be in than this at the moment. The qualifying lap set it up. I was able to then just break the slipstream straight away and really just push for the first lap reasonably hard, but I wasn't driving too aggressive, as you can see. Still bearing in mind that I've got to get 8 laps done out of these tyres, and I had to get obviously 8 laps for fuel. It's an unusual race. I think I was a bit surprised they only did 15 minutes. It was 25 minutes for the top 24 race. I would have thought they would have done 20 minutes for the normal race, because 15 minutes isn't even as long as a daily race. So it baffled me why they done 15 minutes. 20 minutes would have made a lot more sense. It would have meant we would have needed a pit stop for tyres. I don't understand why they did it this way, but this is polyphony, and they make some strange decisions, to be brutally honest. As you can see there now, RC Miura's managed to get that gap back down to 1.5 seconds. So now again, I've just got to keep it smooth. What I was doing was just trying to make sure that he wouldn't get in the slipstream that obviously of my car, because I did it when I was 2.5 seconds ahead. I decided to use more fuel saving and try and save the fuel even more. As you can see, I'm in really good fuel condition state right now. I've got more fuel than I actually need already in this race, so I've done a really good job with the fuel. It's pretty much perfect how I've done the race so far. And you can see as soon as it gets to around 1.3 seconds, I just push a little bit in a certain section and managed to build the lead back up. Down here I was particularly strong. I was noticing that RC Miura was losing a little bit of time on this section. He seemed to be losing about 2-3 tenths just on that section coming out of the corner. It started dropping down to about 1.7 seconds once we come out of the corner and get on the accelerator. So maybe he was having issues with certain corners, I'm not too sure. This lap he seemed to do it reasonably well, kept the gap at about 1.4 seconds. So everything going as as well, I say expected, but as I would hoped, but I didn't expect it to be like this. Driving really well. I was really confused. You can see into that mixture 2 again at the end of the straight, just to save a bit of fuel, because it didn't actually lose you too much in terms of straight line speed down that straight. I think it was maybe 1 mile per hour, if that, if it even lost you any. As now we've got a new driver in P2, a PRT driver, I think it is, Spanish driver, driving the Golf. So that's a different car. Obviously another very good car for this track because of its, you saw the extreme speed that car has when we did the race in the FIA manufacturers race, when I think it was Derek driving that car, just went past us as if he wasn't moving when we were in the AMG. But obviously I'm in the Ford this time, so it makes it a little bit harder for any car to do that and just breeze past me. But he's about 1.4 seconds behind, and now I need to control the pace to this new driver in P2. But now it's going to be interesting to see if I can do the same sort of race controlling to a different driver in a different car, if I can keep that gap over the threshold for the slipstream. Obviously I don't want him to get within 1.1 seconds, 1 second, because that's when he's going to be at risk of picking up the slipstream. Through this section again, still using that 2 mixture, and you can see I'm doing a really good job with the fuel. Still got 4.8 laps of fuel left. Obviously we're coming up to the end of this lap, we'll be halfway in the race. So first half of the race so far, pretty much going perfect. I can't say I did anything wrong at this stage. I was keeping it clean, I was keeping it smooth, looking after the tyres, looking after the fuel, and everything's going pretty much as I wanted to. I did 1 practice run before this race in terms of race practice, and that was doing this strategy, because I kind of knew that 8 laps, because I think I remember the daily race a while ago when they did it as 8 laps, and the Corvette could quite comfortably get through that race without pitting, and it was the fastest way to do it. So I knew that the no stop strategy was the way to go, and you can see I managed to maintain that gap again to P2. As you can see there, 1.8 seconds clear, and just really controlling the pace still, even to this new driver that's behind me. RC Miura is still in P3, and it looks like a lot of these drivers, obviously they've got the ability to do a little bit more fuel saving than I have, because obviously they're in the slipstreams of each other. The driver who's now in P2 was obviously for the first 3 laps just sitting behind RC Miura, probably helping, letting him, obviously using Miura to save himself some fuel, but I didn't feel like I needed to do that. You can see I'm managing to control it, 1.8 seconds clear, and still doing a really good job with the fuel and keeping the laps consistent. 205 there again, not a bad lap considering I'm just trying to keep the tyres in the condition I want. I could have done in the practice runs I was doing 204.4s and 6s and stuff like that, so there was ability to push the tyres a little bit harder, but I was obviously trying to preserve them for the last few laps when I might need them even more. But everything going really well at this stage as we start lap 5, going really smoothly through turn 2 and getting the lead up even more. It looks like it's staying around, well, it's going around 1.6 seconds, 1.7 seconds, and it's just really controlling at this stage. Not really under pressure to do, drive too aggressively. The gap goes down a little bit every now and then, but I felt like when the gap goes down to 1.2, 1.4, I could quite happily get that back up to nearer the 2 second mark. So driving pretty much perfect at this stage and not making any real errors, just keeping it nice and smooth, making sure I keep the car away from any errors at this point of the race. And I really couldn't fault the driving at this stage. I was in a little bit of I said it before, I was in a bit of a state of shock because I just didn't expect to be able to do this in this race. I do know that Bathurst is very strong for myself now since I changed the view. Any track where walls are very close, this view definitely is a lot stronger than the cockpit because you've got more visibility of where you're driving. Now on the downhill section you can see the fuel is in, I'm 3.6 laps of fuel and we're coming to the end of the lap, so the fuel's in pretty much perfect, so I can use more fuel if I need to, and building that gap up on the straight where the Ford's a little bit stronger than that Golf down the straight. Even though the Golf is very fast down the straights, the Ford's just got a little bit more, I think, in the final gears, which does enable you to pull away a bit, and getting that gap back up to 1.6 seconds there, 1.7 seconds, and nearly 1.8 seconds now. So I was keeping an eye on that, and we're about to start lap 6, and this is where obviously I start making a few silly mistakes, and this is really frustrating because this race, you know, was 2 seconds clear at this stage, and I think I saw the 2 second gap, and I think I started just taking it too easy, and I think I just stopped concentrating because I felt like the win was clearly looking like it was going to be mine at this stage. You know, 2.1 seconds nearly that lead now, and going into this turn 2, I just wasn't looking. I think I was too busy looking at the delta on the left, and I outbraked myself and got onto the dirty marbles there on the left hand side and just about stopped hitting the wall, but look how much time I lost and give the chance of P2 getting into my slipstream. You can see he's picked up that slipstream there, so from 2.1 second lead, commanding the race, down to 0.6 of a second, and I was so frustrated this. So started to really push now on this part of the lap just to see if I could get out the slipstream. Managed to get back out the slipstream there, got the gap up to about a second, so looked like I was going to be able to break that slipstream straight away, going through these corners, and got it over the 1 second mark. So I started driving really aggressively because I could see the mistake I'd made, put it into one mixture there, which I didn't really want to do. And then going on this downhill section, I think the one mixture caught me out because I hadn't put it back to 2 mixture for this part. This is where I needed 2 mixtures to stop the rear stepping out. It stepped out a bit, got the understeer, couldn't get on the power, and then you got P2 right in my slipstream now for the downhill section, which is not what I wanted that Golf to be near me. So I'm going to have to try and drive this quite aggressively now. Luckily, I've done a really good job with the fuel, so I knew that I could drive down this hill quite aggressively. You see revving out a lot more, and that Golf just can't get close enough at this point, even though he's in the slipstream. He's starting to pick that slipstream up now though. Obviously this is the final gear and that Golf is so fast. He's having a look on the inside there, but he's not close enough. He can't go for that move on the inside. I stay defensive in the middle of the track there. He breaks a bit late, nudges me there. It actually gives me, this really frustrated me. I'm going to show you the replay at the end of the lap. I started flashing him here because he actually nudged me and pushed me out the way basically. And if I personally, from my perspective, if I did something like that and I tapped someone into the corner for the lead and got into P1, I think I would give that position back, especially in that situation, but I'm not too sure. He ends up in P1, and then obviously I got really aggressive because I was getting wound up and started getting on power too soon and lost P2, so pretty much having the race 100% covered for a fairly easy win. And I've just made the one stupid error was my fault. I made the error into this corner, and it's annoying because it wasn't like the tyres were causing it, it was just bad driving. You can see the next lap, no issue at all, got through there fine. So it was really poor driving on my behalf, and I really shouldn't have made that mistake because I should have just started, I should have just kept on it, and I think I just had a lapse of concentration where I saw the gap was getting over 2 seconds, and it was all my own errors. Now I've got to try and see if I can get past P2. Annoyingly now it looks like he's still within the slipstream of P1, maybe just slightly picking that up, so I've got to try and drive it smooth, and this is not where I wanted to be after commanding the race. So I was really disappointed as P2 makes an error there and goes defensive. Obviously no way you can get past at this point of the track, especially with how wide the forward is. There's nothing I could do. I had to just sit back and just try and get on the power early there, but kicked the dust up, and I had to kind of just be careful of where I was putting the power down. I didn't want to go into the back of P2 and then onto the back straight. Gonna have to use up all the revs. You can see getting in the slipstream. I've got the fuel to use, so luckily because I'd done that really good fuel saving at the start when I was in the lead without any slipstream, it's given me the ability to actually push a bit down the straight to stop anyone else getting past me, and I can actually start picking up the slipstream in P2. So we come into the final lap now, and I really wanted to try and get back into at least P2, and I was frustrated at what P1 done. I'm going to show you on the highlights why I was a bit annoyed, because he outbraked himself, tapped me into the corner, and it's the only reason he overtook. Without that tap he wasn't getting past, so I was a bit frustrated at that, but not much you can do when other people make mistakes. Or I think he outbroke himself personally. I don't think it was a deliberate tap, but he kind of took advantage of his own mistake. So that's where I personally would have probably not actually. I think if I knew I'd made a mistake and it was my error, outbreaking myself, that got me in the lead, I think I would probably give that position back. As you can see, going up the hill now, picking up the slipstream, and I'm going to try and make a move for P2. I've got the fuel to do it. go on the outside, and I have to give him space on the inside here now. I don't want to cut him up, so I try and give him space and try and hold it around the outside, and I just can't do that as he cuts back across the line. Perfectly acceptable driving by P2 there, good defensive driving. I could have probably have been a little bit more aggressive with that move, but I didn't want to cut P2 up and obviously ruin an okay result that was still looking like an okay result. I'm still in P3, so it wasn't a disaster. It was just more disappointing, obviously, the fact that I knew that my pace was better than the P3 that's showing on the screen alone. But I'm going to still try and push to the end. You can see if I can push P2 into a mistake. Through this section, not much you can really do. There's no real opportunity to overtake. Going down this hill, I think I should have really gone into third gear for this corner now that the tyres were starting to fade, but actually did that okay then. But P2 managed to get a really good drive out of that corner, and then going into the final corner, I tried to take a really wide line at this point just so I could get on the power as early as possible. Did it reasonably well. P2 looked like he had a little moment on the exit, so I'm starting to pick up that slipstream. At this point I did start to notice, obviously, when I had been driving a little bit more aggressively on them straights, making sure no one could get past me, and obviously trying to overtake P2 with that little battle, I had used up a bit of my fuel. I only got 2% left, so you can see at this stage where I start picking up slipstream and going to a higher mixture and just lift and coast into the braking zone, and I've pretty much got to settle now for P3, so not overly happy because I really was looking like a controlled race from P1, but not much you can do. It's still a good result, but it does show you one thing, is that the improvement in my pace, I think, at the moment is really starting to pick up, as I'm starting to get disappointed with P3s, against good competition. As P1 and 2, it looks like P1 might have even run out of fuel on the finishing line, I'm not too sure there. But go over the line, P3, still some solid points, should have been a win. It was pretty much looking like an easy win. It was my own mistake, as I obviously record the PS4 version as a backup just in case. Might have needed that with what I did with the sound, but luckily I think I've managed to get the sound lined up pretty much where it should have been with the actual gameplay, so not too bad. I think it might have been slightly out, but I couldn't really tell, so it sounded okay when I watched it back. As you can see there, picking up P3 and 2,450 points, so not bad points, but I would have much rather have had, obviously, the 2,700 that it was looking like. My own fault though. This was a mistake I made. You're going to see I actually started braking a bit too late. The brake lights go on just past 100 there, and that's the reason why I made the mistake. A moment lapse in concentration where I braked too late. I think it's because, again, I was looking at the delta and worrying about the delta rather than just keeping concentrating on the race. So that was my own fault, and that's what caused this situation. But this is the little tap that I'm going to show you now. I'm going to slow it down also and show you a different angle, but there he taps me into the braking zone. I don't like the look of it, but I don't think it was deliberate. I just think he outbraked himself. But then really I wouldn't have been happy at getting an overtake like that. I personally wouldn't have liked to overtake someone like that, but he obviously wanted to keep that P1 and carried on. So that's how it went. You can see then on the exit I got really aggressive because I was really wound up and actually cost myself another position. So if I would have just kept my head a bit more, I could have maybe have stayed behind him and then got back past him. But obviously you get wound up in these situations. So this was what happened. You can see he backs out of the move into this corner, and then I brake pretty much dead on where I should be braking on the 150, obviously, in this car, when I'm just tyres are starting to go in there. The tap into the corner, which then pushes me straight on. You can see I can't stop the car, and I just about managed to stop the car and not run off the track. It was close to pretty much losing a lot of positions. I think if I would have lost a lot more, I really wouldn't have been happy with that, but just about managed to keep it on the track. You're going to see now from this angle, obviously you can't go for that move on the inside. I seen in the mirror he wasn't going for it, but then he just brakes and then just taps into the corner there and then cuts up on the inside and takes that position. Not the nicest move I've seen on the game, but I don't think it was deliberate. I just think that he outbraked himself and then just decided that he was going to keep that P1. But the race, not really much I could do. My own mistakes caused it, obviously, and this was the move I tried to make in P2, and you can see I think I was actually a bit too kind on the space I gave. Maybe I should have cut across about there, but I didn't. I tried to give him space all the way on the inside just in case he came back up, because I didn't want to cut him up, and I could have been a bit more aggressive there, but I wasn't, and I didn't make that move. But it came close to getting P2 back, and I think I showed that I had the pace for P1, and that's what matters for me personally. I think it shows that I'm definitely making good progress with the game in terms of, it's been since I changed the view on the bumper, my pace has just got so much better, and then obviously the new tyre models come in, it really suits me, and everything's going a lot better now. So let's hope I can keep some momentum going on. I'm not too sure if I'm going to do every single nations race now to the end. I need to get a few more good results in it. I'll probably pick the few that I want to race, because I want to concentrate on the Manufacturers Championship. That's the one that's more important to me. So some of the races, I'm not too sure if I'm going to do the F1 race yet, because I think a lot of people are probably not going to do that in case it affects your DR for the top 24 races in the Manufacturer. I don't want that to happen. So let's see what happens, and hopefully I can pick up some good results in the Manufacturers races. I'll have the Manufacturers top 24 race uploaded tomorrow. I'm going to have to do the same thing with the audio for that, because I'm guessing the same things happened with that, with recording the audio. So I'll have to re-record the audio for that race, and then hopefully get that out tomorrow. It's quite an entertaining video. It's got a lot of action, a lot of close racing. I think you'll enjoy it. It was a bit frustrating, but it was a good clean race mainly, and I enjoyed the actual battles that were in it. So I'll get that one out tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. Click the notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I do try and upload as much as possible, and we'll be back very soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone.